The first hunting ship broke through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its obsidian hull gleaming with an otherworldly sheen that seemed to devour light itself. Commander Vextai of the Kythera Dominion stood on the bridge of the massive vessel, his four arms crossed in satisfaction as he gazed down at the blue-green world below. His species had perfected the art of hunting sentient beings across 17 star systems, and this primitive planet would be no different from the dozens of worlds they had already stripped clean. Preliminary scans complete, Commander reported his second-in-command, Zek Moore, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking as he manipulated the bioorganic controls. The dominant species appears to be bipedal, carbon-based, with rudimentary technology. No energy shields detected around their settlements. No plasma weapon signatures. They appear to rely on crude projectile weapons and chemical propulsion. Vextai's mandibles clicked in amusement, the sound echoing through the cavernous bridge lined with trophy skulls from 100 conquered worlds. How refreshingly pathetic. Their most advanced vessels barely reach their own moon. Tell me, how many population centers have we identified? Approximately 12,000 settlements of significant size, Commander. Total population estimated at 7.8 billion specimens. More than enough to supply the harvest quotas for the next 5 cycles. The Kythera had been apex predators long before they reached the stars. On their homeworld of Kytheros Prime, they had dominated an ecosystem so violent that survival required not just strength, but cunning, patience, and an almost supernatural ability to hunt. When they finally achieved spaceflight, they simply expanded their hunting grounds to encompass entire galaxies. Their society was built around the concept of the Great Hunt, where entire species were cataloged, studied, and eventually harvested for both sustenance and sport. Begin the standard protocol, Vextai ordered, his yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. Deploy observation drones to monitor their military responses. I want to know how they react when they realize they're no longer alone in the universe. The first human to spot the alien vessel was Dr. Sarah Chun, an astronomer working the night shift at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. She had been tracking what she initially assumed was a meteorite when her instruments detected something that made her blood run cold. The object was decelerating against atmospheric entry, following a controlled descent pattern that defied all natural explanation. "This is impossible," she whispered, her hands trembling as she adjusted the radio telescope's configuration. The readings were clear and undeniable. The object measured nearly 2 kilometers in length, possessed a metallic composition unlike anything in Earth's solar system, and was broadcasting electromagnetic signatures that could only indicate advanced technology. Within hours, every major observatory on Earth had confirmed her findings. The object had settled into a geosynchronous orbit directly above the Pacific Ocean, seemingly content to observe. But Sarah's instruments detected something else that made her realize this was no peaceful first contact scenario. Energy readings suggested the vessel possessed weapons capable of devastating entire continents. At the Pentagon, General Marcus Rodriguez was being briefed by the best scientific minds the military could assemble on short notice. The conference room's walls were lined with satellite imagery of the alien vessel, its dark silhouette a stark contrast against the star field behind it. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Rodriguez began, his weathered face grim with the weight of unprecedented responsibility. "We are facing a situation that no military doctrine has ever prepared us for. We have confirmed the presence of an extraterrestrial vessel of unknown intentions positioned above our planet. Our satellites have detected at least 17 more objects approaching from deep space, all following similar trajectory patterns." Dr. Emily Watson, the Pentagon's chief xenobiologist, leaned forward in her chair. Despite having prepared for this moment her entire career, the reality of alien contact felt surreal. "General, our analysis suggests these vessels are designed for warfare, not exploration. The energy signatures we're detecting indicate weapon systems that could devastate entire cities with single shots." "How long until the other ships arrive?" Rodriguez asked. 48 hours, sir. Maybe less." The general's jaw tightened. "Recommendations?" "We go to DEFCON 1 immediately," suggested Colonel James Harrison, the room's senior military strategist. "Alert all allied nations, activate every defense system we have, and pray that diplomacy works better than our weapons will. What none of them realized was that aboard the Kithra hunting ships, their every move was being monitored with predatory interest. Vextai watched the humans' military preparations with the same detached amusement a cat might show while watching mice scurry around a maze. Their satellites were crude, but functional. Their weapons were primitive, but numerous. Their responses were predictable, but admirably swift. They're more organized than the Zelthani were, observed Zekmore, referencing a species they had harvested 3 cycles earlier. Look how quickly their scattered tribes are attempting to coordinate a planetary response. Coordination means nothing without power, Vextai replied. The Zelthani had energy weapons that could crack moons, and we still harvested their homeworld in less than a solar day. These humans have barely discovered how to split atoms. Their resistance will be brief. The Kithra hunting doctrine was brutally simple and had never failed across 17 star systems. First, establish orbital superiority to prevent any possibility of escape. Second, demonstrate overwhelming force to break the will of the prey. Third, identify the most valuable specimens for live capture while eliminating any who might organize effective resistance. Fourth, process the remainder of the population for sustenance and materials. The entire operation rarely took more than a few planetary rotations. But as Vextai studied the human response patterns, something nagged at his predator instincts. The humans weren't just organizing military resistance. They were doing something the Kithra had never observed before in a prey species. Instead of panicking or attempting to flee, they were adapting their behavior in real time, learning from each observation of the alien ships. Dr. Lisa Park, a behavioral psychologist working with the Pentagon's hastily assembled xenology team, had noticed the same thing from the human perspective. They're studying us, she told the emergency council that had been formed to coordinate Earth's response. Look at these movement patterns. They're not just positioning for attack. They're learning how we think, how we organize, how we fight. General Rodriguez studied the tracking data that showed the alien vessel adjusting its position every few hours, always maintaining optimal observation angles of major military installations. You're saying they're profiling us? Exactly like a predator studies prey before striking. They want to understand our weaknesses, our response times, our command structures. This isn't random surveillance. This is systematic hunting behavior. The revelation sent a chill through the assembled leaders. Earth wasn't facing an invasion by an unknown alien civilization. They were being hunted by something that had clearly done this before, something that approached the extermination of entire species with the cold efficiency of a slaughterhouse. Meanwhile, in a secure bunker beneath NORAD, the most brilliant military minds on Earth were frantically trying to develop strategies to fight an enemy whose capabilities they could only guess at. The irony wasn't lost on Colonel Harrison that humanity's first contact with aliens was forcing them to plan for their own extinction. We have to assume conventional warfare won't work, he told the assembled strategists. If they have the technology to cross interstellar space, our missiles and fighters are probably like bows and arrows to them. We need to think asymmetrically. Asymmetric how? Asked General Park, the Air Force's top tactical planner. Harrison pointed to a map of the world marked with red dots indicating major military installations. We stop thinking like a military and start thinking like guerrillas. If we can't match their technology, we make them fight us on our terms. Urban warfare, tunnel systems, environmental advantages they can't anticipate. You're talking about turning every city on Earth into a potential battleground, General Park observed. I'm talking about survival, Harrison replied grimly. If these things have wiped out other species before us, then traditional military doctrine is exactly what they'll be expecting. We need to be something they've never encountered. As the hours ticked by toward the arrival of the alien fleet, humanity found itself in a position it hadn't experienced since the earliest days of civilization, being hunted by something bigger, stronger, and more technologically advanced. But humanity had survived as a species not because they were the strongest or fastest creatures on Earth, but because they were the most adaptable. And they were about to prove that evolutionary advantage still applied, even when the hunting ground had expanded to encompass the stars. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of humanity, but whether the galaxy's most successful predators had finally encountered prey that could bite back. The Kithara hunting fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of mechanical locusts, 17 massive vessels that blotted out portions of the night sky as they took positions around Earth. Each ship was a masterwork of predatory engineering, designed not just for conquest, but for the systematic processing of entire civilizations. Their hulls bore the scars and trophies of dozens of successful hunts, alien metals, and bone integrated into their superstructure as grisly reminders of their victims. Commander Vextai stood in the observation gallery of his flagship, gazing down at the blue marble that hung defenseless in the void. Behind him, holographic displays showed tactical readouts from across the human world. Military installations, population centers, industrial complexes, all cataloged and marked for optimal harvesting. The process had become so routine that he could calculate the operation's completion time down to the hour. Fleet deployment complete, Commander, reported Zekmore. All hunting ships are in position. Orbital bombardment platforms are online. Harvesting bays are prepared for specimen processing. Vextai's 4 arms manipulated the bioorganic controls with practiced ease, bringing up detailed scans of human military preparations. Their response is interesting. Look at these patterns. They're not massing their forces for a single decisive battle. They're dispersing, creating smaller unit formations across thousands of locations. Cowardly behavior, Zekmore observed with distaste. The Andorian collective at least had the dignity to face us in direct combat before their inevitable defeat. Perhaps, Vextai mused, though his predator instincts detected something unusual in the human strategy. Begin Phase 1. Target their primary military installations. Show them the futility of resistance. The first plasma beam lanced down from orbit like the wrath of an angry god. The Cheyenne Mountain Complex, home to NORAD and America's primary missile defense systems, simply ceased to exist in a flash of superheated particles that turned solid rock into plasma in microseconds. The mountain itself was carved in half, its remains forming a glass crater that could be seen from orbit. Across the globe, similar strikes eliminated key military targets with surgical precision. The Pentagon's eastern wing vanished in a controlled demolition of energy. Strategic missile bases in Russia, China, and the United Kingdom were reduced to smoking holes. Aircraft carriers in the middle of the ocean were turned into brief stars that burned for seconds before sinking beneath the waves. Dr. Sarah Chun watched the destruction from a hastily erected command center in an abandoned subway station beneath New York City. The electromagnetic pulses from the orbital strikes had knocked out most satellite communications, but her jury-rigged equipment still picked up the terrifying efficiency of the alien assault. In less than 30 minutes, humanity's most advanced military assets had been eliminated with the casual ease of someone swatting flies. They're not trying to destroy us completely, she reported to General Rodriguez, who was coordinating resistance efforts from a mobile command post that moved locations every few hours. These are precision strikes designed to eliminate our ability to retaliate. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the improvised radio network. Recommendations, Doctor? They want us alive, sir. This isn't an extermination. It's a harvest. The general's response was interrupted by reports flooding in from around the globe. The alien ships weren't just destroying military targets. Massive vessels were descending into Earth's atmosphere, taking positions above major population centers. From their undersides extended collection apparatus that looked disturbingly like the feeding mechanisms of enormous insects. In London, millions of people looked up to see a kilometer-long shadow blotting out the sky above their city. The alien harvesting ship hung motionless, its biomechanical tendrils beginning to unfurl toward the streets below. Similar scenes were playing out in Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, and every major city on Earth. But the Kithara had made their first mistake. They assumed that eliminating humanity's conventional military forces would break the species' will to resist. What they hadn't anticipated was that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to survive against impossible odds. Colonel James Harrison crouched in the rubble of what had once been a shopping mall in downtown Chicago, watching through military-grade binoculars as the alien harvesting ship positioned itself above the city center. Around him, a hastily assembled team of special forces operators, local police, firefighters, and civilian volunteers prepared for what conventional military doctrine would classify as suicide mission. Remember, Harrison spoke into his throat mic, addressing similar teams positioned throughout the city. We're not trying to win a conventional battle. We're trying to make them bleed. Show them that harvesting humans comes with a price. The plan was desperately simple and completely insane. While the aliens focused on the obvious military targets, civilian resistance cells had been forming in subway tunnels, abandoned buildings, and underground parking garages. Using improvised explosives, hunting rifles, and weapons scavenged from destroyed military bases, they intended to turn every street corner into a potential ambush point. Dr. Emily Watson, the Pentagon's xenobiologist, had studied every second of footage they had of the alien ships and their occupants. They're ambush predators, she had told Harrison during the frantic planning sessions. Look at their body structure, their ship designs, their hunting patterns. They're evolved for quick, overwhelming strikes against prey that can't fight back effectively. They've never had to deal with prolonged resistance. You're saying we can tire them out? Harrison had asked. I'm saying we can make them angry. And angry predators make mistakes. The first human counterattack began not with military precision, but with the chaotic fury of a cornered animal fighting for its life. As Kithera collection teams descended into Chicago's streets, they found themselves facing something they had never encountered in 17 star systems of conquest: prey that refused to be prey. The aliens emerged from their transport craft like living nightmares. Each Kithera warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming with biomechanical augmentations. Forearms ending in razor-sharp claws manipulated energy weapons that could slice through tank armor like paper. Their movements were fluid and predatory, honed by millions of years of evolution as apex hunters. But for the first time in their species' history, the prey shot back. Master Sergeant Maria Rodriguez had been a sniper in 3 different conflicts before the aliens arrived. She had learned to shoot in the mountains of Afghanistan, perfected her skills in urban warfare in Syria, and now found herself using everything she had learned to hunt something that was hunting her entire species. From her position on the 15th floor of a partially collapsed office building, she watched a Kithera collection team move through the street below with the confident swagger of unchallenged predators. Target acquired, she whispered into her radio. 200 meters. 3 hostiles. Her rifle was a standard military-issue weapon, nothing special except for the depleted uranium rounds that had been hastily manufactured and distributed to resistance cells around the globe. The Pentagon's last act before its destruction had been to identify the most effective human weapons against the limited alien technology they had observed. The shot took the lead Kithera in the head, the depleted uranium round punching through its exoskeleton and dropping the creature instantly. The remaining 2 aliens reacted with inhuman speed, their energy weapons sweeping the building where the shot had originated. But Rodriguez was already moving, using escape routes she had prepared days earlier. Across the city, similar ambushes were occurring every few minutes. Improvised explosive devices detonated under alien transport vehicles. Molotov cocktails rained down from rooftops onto collection teams. Human fighters appeared from manholes and alleyways, fired concentrated bursts of automatic weapons fire, then disappeared back into the urban maze before the aliens could respond. It wasn't enough to stop the harvest. The Kithera were too numerous, too well-armed, too technologically advanced. But for the first time in their species' history, they were taking casualties while hunting. The prey was fighting back with a viciousness that their evolutionary programming had never prepared them for. Aboard the flagship, Vextai studied the casualty reports with growing unease. In the first day of harvesting, his forces had lost more warriors than they typically did during entire planetary conquests. The humans were using tactics that defied every hunting scenario the Kithera had encountered. They're not fighting to win, Zekmore observed, his mandibles clicking with confusion. They're fighting to inflict maximum damage while retreating. It's unprecedented. Increase collection team sizes, Vextai ordered. Deploy our elite hunter units. End this resistance quickly. But as night fell over Earth and the first day of the invasion came to a close, something had changed in the dynamic between predator and prey. The humans were learning, adapting, evolving their tactics with each encounter. They were studying their hunters with the same intensity that the Kithra had studied them. And in hidden bunkers around the world, humanity's greatest minds were working frantically to turn their new understanding of alien technology into weapons that could level the playing field. The hunt was far from over. But for the first time, the Kithra were beginning to understand what it felt like to be the hunted. The turning point came not from humanity's greatest military minds or most advanced weapons, but from a 12-year-old girl named Jenny Martinez who lived in the sewers beneath Mexico City. While the world armies fought and died above ground, Jenny had discovered something that would change the entire dynamic of the invasion. She had been exploring the ancient tunnel system with her younger brother Carlos when they heard the distinctive humming of Kithra technology approaching through the drainage pipes. The aliens had begun using the underground infrastructure to move their collection teams undetected, turning humanity's own survival instinct against them. But as Jenny pressed herself against the tunnel wall, watching the biomechanical forms of two Kithra scouts pass just meters away, she noticed something that trained military observers had missed. The aliens were blind. Not physically blind, but their advanced sensors and sophisticated hunting equipment were calibrated for surface warfare and traditional military tactics. In the cramped, humid environment of the underground tunnels, surrounded by interference from electrical systems and metal pipes, their technological advantages became liabilities. They moved slowly, cautiously, relying on basic visual confirmation rather than their usual sensor arrays. Jenny waited until the aliens had passed, then carefully followed them through the tunnels. Her bare feet made no sound on the wet concrete, and her small size allowed her to use maintenance passages that the larger aliens couldn't access. She watched as they struggled to coordinate their movements in the confined space, their energy weapons awkwardly positioned, their natural agility hampered by the low ceilings and narrow passages. When she finally made contact with the resistance cell operating in her sector, Jenny's information would spark a revolution in human tactics that the Kithra were completely unprepared for. Colonel Harrison received the report while coordinating a desperate defense of what remained of Chicago's downtown area. The alien harvest ships had been systematically processing city blocks, their mechanical tendrils extracting everything from buildings to people with horrifying efficiency. Human resistance had slowed the process, but hadn't stopped it. "Sir," came the voice of Lieutenant Shun through the crackling radio. "We're getting reports from Mexico City that might change everything. The locals have discovered a major vulnerability in alien operations." Harrison ducked as another energy beam carved through the wall above his position. "I'm listening." The underground environments are neutralizing their technological advantages. Their sensors don't work properly in confined spaces with high electromagnetic interference. They're essentially fighting blind down there. The implications hit Harrison immediately. Every major city on Earth had extensive underground infrastructure. Subway systems, utility tunnels, storm drains, basement complexes, mining networks. Humanity had spent centuries burrowing beneath their cities, creating a three-dimensional maze that only they truly understood. "Give me Dr. Watson," Harrison ordered, "and find me every urban planner, subway engineer, and mining expert still alive in the city." Within hours, a new strategy was being implemented across the globe. Instead of fighting the aliens where they were strongest, humans began systematically retreating into environments where their technological disadvantages became advantages. The battle for Earth was moving underground. Dr. Emily Watson had spent years studying predator-prey relationships in nature, but the current situation was unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary history. She stood in an abandoned subway station that had been converted into a resistance command center, studying biological samples that had been recovered from dead Kithra warriors. "They're perfectly adapted for open environment hunting," she explained to the assembled resistance leaders. "Look at their sensory organs, their body structure, their weapons systems. Everything about them is designed for quick, overwhelming attacks in clear terrain with good visibility." General Rodriguez, operating from a mobile command post that moved through abandoned mine shafts beneath Colorado, participated in the briefing via encrypted radio. "What you're saying is that we've been fighting them on their terms." "Exactly. But underground, in confined spaces with limited visibility and high interference, they lose every advantage that made them successful predators. They become clumsy, slow, vulnerable. How vulnerable? Asked Harrison. Watson smiled grimly. Vulnerable enough that a 12-year-old girl with a knife can take one down. The shift in tactics began with small-scale raids designed to test the theory. In the Paris catacombs, a team of former French Foreign Legion soldiers used the ancient bone-lined tunnels to ambush a Kythera collection unit. The aliens' energy weapons proved nearly useless in the narrow passages, while human fighters could use their knowledge of the maze-like environment to attack from unexpected angles. In a London underground, resistance fighters led by former SAS operators turned the tube system into a death trap for alien forces. Motion sensors placed at strategic points gave early warning of Kythera approach, while improvised explosives placed in the tunnels could be detonated remotely to collapse entire sections. But it was in New York City's subway system that the new tactics proved most devastating. Detective Mike O'Brien had been a transit cop for 15 years before the invasion. He knew every tunnel, every maintenance access, every abandoned station in the system. When the aliens began using the underground to avoid human resistance above ground, they found themselves in his domain. They move like they own the place, O'Brien reported to the Resistance Command. But they don't understand the environment. They take main tunnels instead of service passages. They don't watch for overhead access points. They're hunting like surface predators in a three-dimensional maze. O'Brien's team had developed tactics specifically designed for the underground environment. Using modified subway cars as mobile firing platforms, they would engage alien forces in the tunnels, then retreat through passages too small or too dangerous for the larger aliens to follow. They turned electrical systems into weapons, flooding tunnels with live current that the aliens' biomechanical augmentations couldn't handle. The psychological effect on the Kythera was even more significant than the physical damage. For the first time in their species' history, the galaxy's apex predators were experiencing fear. They had conquered 17-star systems by being bigger, stronger, faster, and better equipped than their prey. But in the underground warrens beneath human cities, they were the ones being hunted. Commander Vextai studied the casualty reports with growing alarm. What should have been a simple harvesting operation was turning into a prolonged conflict that was costing his forces dearly. Worse, the humans were learning and adapting faster than any prey species he had ever encountered. The resistance is becoming more organized, Zekmore reported. They're sharing tactical information across their global communication networks. Each of our hunting teams is facing enemies who know our weaknesses. Then, we adapt as well, Vextai replied. Deploy the plasma bombers. Collapse their underground networks. Force them to fight on the surface. The orbital bombardment of major cities' underground infrastructure began at dawn. Massive energy beams lanced down from space, targeting subway entrances, utility access points, and any opening that might lead to the underground resistance networks. The plasma bombardment turned sections of cities into glass craters, but the humans had anticipated this response. Dr. Sarah Chan crouched in a deep maintenance tunnel beneath what had once been Manhattan, listening to the thunderous impacts overhead as the alien fleet attempted to destroy the underground resistance network. But the tunnels had been prepared for this possibility. Critical passages had been reinforced with salvage materials. Alternative routes had been mapped and prepared. Food and medical supplies had been distributed throughout the system. They're trying to force us back to the surface, she reported to the Resistance Command. But they don't understand how deep these systems go. Some of these tunnels were built during the Cold War to survive nuclear attacks. They're not going to collapse them with surface bombardment. The aliens' attempt to destroy the underground networks only drove the human resistance deeper. Maintenance crews, urban explorers, and anyone with knowledge of subterranean systems became invaluable assets. They led resistance fighters through forgotten passages, abandoned construction sites, and natural cave systems that didn't appear on any official maps. In Moscow, resistance fighters used the extensive metro system and Soviet-era bunkers to create an underground city that could house thousands of people. In Tokyo, the maze of subway lines and underground shopping complexes became a fortress that alien forces couldn't penetrate. In every major city on Earth, the battle was moving into three-dimensional spaces that humans understood far better than their alien hunters. But The true breakthrough came when Dr. Watson made a discovery that would change the entire nature of the conflict. While analyzing captured Kithra technology, she identified a critical weakness that could be exploited using materials readily available in urban underground environments. Their biomechanical systems are vulnerable to electromagnetic interference, she announced during a briefing broadcast to resistance cells worldwide. But not the kind generated by our electronic equipment. They're specifically vulnerable to the electromagnetic fields generated by electrical current running through water. The implications were staggering. Every major city's underground was filled with water pipes, drainage systems, and flooding-prone areas. If they could flood sections of tunnel systems and run electrical current through the water, they could create zones that were lethal to the aliens but safe for humans using proper insulation. The first successful test occurred in the flooded tunnels beneath Lower Manhattan. A Kithara hunting team pursuing human resistance fighters found themselves trapped in knee-deep water as thousands of volts of electricity turned the tunnel into a killing field. The aliens' biomechanical augmentations amplified the electrical discharge, overloading their nervous systems and shutting down their natural defenses. Word of the successful tactic spread through the resistance networks faster than the aliens could adapt to counter it. Within days, every major underground system on Earth was being converted into an electrical maze that was deadly to the Kithara, but navigable by humans who knew which passages were safe. For the first time since the invasion began, the hunters were becoming afraid of their prey. And in the deepest tunnels beneath the world's cities, humanity was preparing to take the fight to the aliens in a way that would prove that even the galaxy's most successful predators could become the hunted. The revolution began in the deepest tunnels beneath London, where Professor Margaret Hastings, a theoretical physicist who had been working on experimental energy research before the invasion, made a discovery that would shift the balance of power between humanity and the Kithara forever. She had been studying fragments of alien technology recovered from the underground battles, using improvised equipment in a laboratory set up in an abandoned section of the London Underground. The tunnels around her position had been flooded and electrified, creating a dead zone that even the most aggressive Kithara hunting parties avoided. It was in this relative safety that she made an observation that changed everything. The energy signatures from their weapons and biomechanical systems aren't just similar to our theoretical models for zero-point energy, she reported to the Global Resistance Network during one of their encrypted communication sessions. They're using principles that we've been researching for decades, which means their technology might not be as alien as we thought. Dr. Sarah Chun, now coordinating scientific research for the resistance from her base in the New York subway tunnels, immediately understood the implications. You're saying we might be able to reverse engineer their technology? More than that, Hastings replied. I'm saying we might be able to turn it against them. Their weapons systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they're based on energy manipulation principles that follow universal physical laws. If we can understand how they focus and direct energy, we might be able to disrupt it. The research project that followed was unlike anything in human history. Working in underground laboratories hidden beneath the world's cities, teams of scientists, engineers, and technicians began systematically analyzing every piece of Kithara technology they could recover. They were aided by resistance fighters who risked their lives to capture intact alien equipment, and by urban explorers who used their knowledge of forgotten tunnels to establish secure research facilities in places the aliens couldn't find. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tommy Rodriguez, a 19-year-old electrical engineering student who had been working with the Madrid resistance, was attempting to create a more efficient power source for their underground facilities when he accidentally discovered how to generate an energy field that disrupted Kithara biomechanical systems at the cellular level. I was trying to amplify the electrical current we use for the tunnel defenses, Tommy explained to Professor Hastings during a video conference transmitted through fiber optic cables that ran through abandoned utility tunnels. But I miscalculated the frequency modulation. Instead of just creating a basic electrical field, I generated something that resonated with the biomechanical components in the alien equipment we captured. The effect had been dramatic. Kithara weapons and armor exposed to Tommy's modified electrical field had simply shut down, their biomechanical systems failing as if they had suffered massive system-wide organ failure. More importantly, The field could be generated using materials and components readily available in any urban environment. Within weeks, every major resistance cell on Earth was working to replicate and improve Tommy's discovery. The underground networks that had been humanity's refuge were transformed into massive research and development facilities. Subway platforms became manufacturing centers. Abandoned tunnels were converted into testing ranges. The infrastructure that had saved humanity from extinction was now being used to turn them from prey into predators. Commander Vextai stood in the war room of his flagship, studying holographic displays that showed a tactical situation he had never encountered in centuries of conquest across 17 star systems. The numbers were clear and increasingly alarming. Kithra casualties were mounting exponentially. Harvesting operations were failing at an unprecedented rate. Most disturbing of all, human resistance was becoming more effective with each passing day. "They're not just adapting to our tactics," reported Zekmor, his forearms manipulating bioorganic controls that displayed real-time battlefield data from across the planet. "They're developing new technologies specifically designed to counter our advantages. This is impossible. Prey species don't evolve this rapidly." Vextai's predator instincts were screaming warnings that he had never experienced before. In his species' long history of conquest, they had encountered desperate last stands, technological surprises, and even clever tactical innovations. But they had never faced a prey species that was actively hunting them back. "Show me the latest casualty reports," he ordered. The holographic display updated with data that made Vextai's exoskeleton click with anxiety. In the past week alone, 17 hunting teams had been completely eliminated in underground operations. 12 collection units had suffered catastrophic equipment failures due to unknown energy fields. 5 orbital support craft had been damaged by what appeared to be improvised ground-based weapons that shouldn't have been able to reach orbital altitude. "The humans are no longer content to simply survive," Vextai observed. "They're actively hunting our forces." The most disturbing reports came from the underground operations in major human cities. Kithra forces entering the tunnel systems were encountering traps and ambushes of increasing sophistication. Human fighters were using knowledge of the underground environment to strike from impossible angles, then disappear into passages that alien sensors couldn't track. Worse, they were capturing Kithra equipment and personnel with disturbing efficiency. "Commander," Zekmor's voice carried an emotion that Vextai had never heard from his second-in-command before: uncertainty. "I'm receiving reports that some of our captured warriors have been interrogated. The humans are systematically learning about our technology, our tactics, our weaknesses. For a species that had dominated the galaxy through the systematic study and exploitation of their prey, the idea of being studied in return was deeply unsettling. The Kithra were accustomed to being the ones who cataloged weaknesses, identified vulnerabilities, and developed strategies for exploitation. Being on the receiving end of such analysis triggered fear responses that their evolution had never prepared them for. But the reports from Earth's surface were even more alarming. In cities around the globe, human resistance fighters were emerging from their underground refuges with weapons and equipment that showed clear evidence of reverse-engineered Kithra technology. Energy weapons that had been captured from fallen alien warriors were being modified and improved. Kithra biomechanical systems were being adapted for human use. Most impossibly of all, humans were beginning to use the aliens' own hunting tactics against them. In the ruins of downtown Chicago, Master Sergeant Maria Rodriguez led a hunting party through the rubble-strewn streets with equipment and tactics that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. Her rifle was a hybrid weapon that combined human engineering with captured alien energy-focusing technology. Her armor was constructed from salvaged Kithra biomechanical components that had been adapted for human physiology. Most importantly, her team was using hunting strategies that the aliens had taught them through their own predatory behavior. "Remember," she whispered to her team as they approached a Kithra collection site, "they hunt by isolating their prey and overwhelming them with superior technology and numbers. We're going to do the same to them." Rodriguez's team had spent days studying the aliens' operational patterns, learning how they established collection sites, how they coordinated their movements, how they responded to threats. They had identified weaknesses in the Kithra tactical doctrine that the aliens themselves were unaware of. Most critically, They had learned that the galaxy's apex predators had never developed defensive strategies because they had never needed them. The ambush began with a coordinated electromagnetic pulse that disabled the aliens' communications and sensory equipment. Rodriguez's team attacked from 6 different directions simultaneously, using captured alien energy weapons to devastating effect. The Kithra warriors found themselves facing an enemy that fought with their own tactics, their own weapons, and their own ruthless efficiency. But Rodriguez's team didn't stop with eliminating the alien collection unit. They systematically captured everything of value: weapons, equipment, biomechanical components, and, most importantly, detailed recordings of alien communication and operational procedures. The information would be analyzed by resistance scientists and used to develop even more effective hunting strategies. The psychological effect on the surviving Kithra was profound. For the first time in their species' history, they were experiencing what it felt like to be hunted by something that understood their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. The predator-prey relationship that had defined their existence was being reversed, and their evolutionary programming had no response for a situation where they were the ones being systematically studied, tracked, and eliminated. Professor Hastings, working from her underground laboratory beneath London, was coordinating the global effort to turn captured alien technology into weapons of human resistance. The research network that spanned the underground systems of every major city had become the most productive scientific collaboration in human history. "We're not just copying their technology," she explained during a briefing transmitted to resistance cells worldwide. "We're improving it. Human engineering approaches combined with alien energy manipulation principles are producing weapons and defensive systems that are more effective than anything either species could develop alone." The most significant breakthrough was the development of what resistance fighters had nicknamed hunter-killer units. Small teams of humans equipped with hybrid technology specifically designed to track and eliminate Kithra forces. These teams used alien sensory equipment modified for human physiology to track their targets, alien energy weapons improved with human engineering principles to eliminate them, and human tactical innovations to outmaneuver opponents who had never faced systematic hunting pressure. As the hunter-killer teams began operating on the surface, the strategic situation on Earth underwent a fundamental shift. The Kithra, who had spent weeks attempting to harvest a planet they considered defenseless prey, found themselves facing an enemy that was actively hunting them with their own technology and tactics. The invasion that should have been completed in days was turning into a prolonged conflict that was costing them more resources than they had ever expended on a single planet. And in the deepest tunnels beneath Earth's cities, humanity was preparing for a counteroffensive that would prove that the galaxy's most successful predators had finally encountered prey that refused to remain prey. The hunted were about to become the hunters, and the Kithra were about to learn why humanity had earned its place at the top of Earth's food chain. The final phase of the war began not with a massive battle, but with a single transmission broadcast from the deepest tunnels beneath Geneva. Dr. Sarah Chun, now coordinating global resistance operations from a command center built in the abandoned particle accelerator complex beneath CERN, addressed the Kithra fleet directly using captured alien communication technology. "We know you can understand us," she began, her voice carrying through frequencies that penetrated the alien ship's biomechanical communication systems. "We know you've been studying our responses, analyzing our behavior, cataloging our weaknesses. You've done this to countless species across 17 star systems. But you made one critical error in your assessment of humanity." Commander Vextai listened to the transmission from his flagship's bridge, his forearms clicking against the bioorganic controls with barely controlled agitation. In the past month, what should have been a simple harvesting operation had become the most costly campaign in Kithra history. His forces had lost more warriors, more equipment, and more ships than in the previous 10 conquests combined. "You assumed that because we hadn't reached the stars, we were primitive," Dr. Chun continued. "You saw our scattered cities, our chemical rockets, our simple satellites, and dismissed us as another easy conquest. But you failed to understand what it means to evolve on a world where everything is trying to kill you." The transmission was being broadcast not just to the alien fleet, but to every human resistance cell on Earth. In underground facilities across the globe, scientists, engineers, and fighters listened as Chun articulated what they had learned about their enemy and themselves. Earth isn't a peaceful world where evolution produced gentle prey species. Earth is a battlefield where only the most adaptable, most cunning, most ruthlessly efficient survivors reach the top of the food chain. You spent millions of years evolving as predators. We spent millions of years evolving as survivors. And now you're about to learn the difference. The counteroffensive began simultaneously in every major city on Earth. Hunter-killer teams, equipped with hybrid human-alien technology, emerged from underground facilities with a single mission: hunt the hunters. But this wasn't the desperate resistance of the early days. This was systematic predation conducted with the cold efficiency that humanity had learned from studying their enemies. Master Sergeant Maria Rodriguez led Alpha Team through the ruins of downtown Chicago, her squad armed with weapons that represented the pinnacle of human engineering combined with alien technology. Their energy rifles were more powerful and accurate than anything the Kithra carried. Their armor incorporated biomechanical systems that had been improved by human innovation. Most importantly, their tactics were based on months of studying how the galaxy's apex predators operated. Target acquired, whispered Corporal Davidson, using alien sensory equipment to track a Kithra collection unit 3 kilometers away. 12 hostiles, moving in standard hunting formation toward the lakefront district. Rodriguez smiled grimly. The aliens were still using the same tactical patterns they had developed for hunting defenseless prey. They had never learned to adapt because they had never faced an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their cunning. Execute hunting pattern Delta, Rodriguez ordered. Remember, we're not trying to defeat them. We're trying to eliminate them. Alpha Team moved through the urban environment with predatory grace that would have impressed the Kithra if they had been able to observe it. Using alien sensory dampening technology, the human hunters became invisible to their prey's sophisticated detection systems. They approached from angles that Kithra tactical doctrine had never anticipated because the aliens had never needed to defend against hunters. The engagement was over in seconds. 12 Kithra warriors, each individually superior to any human in terms of strength, speed, and natural weapons, were eliminated before they even realized they were being hunted. Alpha Team methodically collected their weapons, their equipment, and their biomechanical components, then disappeared back into the urban maze before alien reinforcements could arrive. Similar scenes were playing out in every major city on Earth. The underground networks that had sheltered humanity during the darkest days of the invasion had become launching points for a global hunting campaign. Human teams emerged from hidden tunnels, eliminated alien forces with devastating efficiency, then vanished back in subterranean refuges that the Kithra still couldn't penetrate. But the most significant development was happening in orbit. Professor Hastings, working with captured alien technology and a team of the world's best aerospace engineers, had developed something that should have been impossible with human technology, a spacecraft capable of reaching the alien fleet. The irony is beautiful, she explained to the assembled resistance leadership during a briefing in the underground command center. They brought us the technology we needed to reach them. Their own ships, their own energy systems, their own propulsion technology. We've just improved it. The spacecraft that emerged from a hidden facility beneath the Nevada desert was a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology that surpassed the capabilities of either species alone. Designated Predator 1, it carried a crew of 12 volunteers and enough firepower to threaten even the massive Kithra hunting ships. Colonel James Harrison, now promoted to overall command of global resistance operations, watched from the underground command center as Predator 1 lifted off from Earth's surface. The spacecraft's hybrid propulsion system, based on captured Kithra technology improved with human engineering principles, accelerated it toward the alien fleet faster than anything in the Kithra arsenal. Predator 1 to ground control came the voice of Captain Lisa Park, the Air Force pilot who was commanding humanity's first interstellar hunting mission. We are approaching the alien fleet. All systems are green. Beginning attack run. Aboard the Kithra flagship, Commander Vextai watched in disbelief as the human spacecraft approached his position. The vessel's design incorporated Kithra technology, but its configuration and capabilities were unlike anything in his species' experience. More disturbing, Its energy signatures suggested weapons systems that were more powerful than those carried by his own ships. How is this possible? Zekmore demanded, his exoskeleton clicking with distress. They're a primitive species. They don't have spaceflight capability. They do now, Vextai replied grimly. And they learned it from us. The battle for orbit was unlike anything in Kithra military history. Predator 1, despite being outnumbered 17-1, fought with tactical innovations that the alien commanders had never encountered. The human crew used their ships' superior maneuverability and weapons systems to conduct hit-and-run attacks that systematically damaged the Kithra fleet while avoiding decisive engagement. But Predator 1's primary mission wasn't to defeat the alien fleet in direct combat. Captain Park's orders were to demonstrate that humanity could reach the Kithra ships, could damage them, could hunt them even in their own element. The psychological effect was more important than the physical damage. Attention Kithra fleet, Captain Park broadcast on all alien communication frequencies. This is Captain Lisa Park of the Earth Defense Force. You came to our world believing you were hunting defenseless prey. You have learned that you were wrong. We are giving you one opportunity to withdraw from our system and never return. The response came in the form of coordinated fire from multiple Kithra ships. Energy beams that could devastate planets lanced through space toward Predator 1. But the human spacecraft, incorporating alien technology improved with human tactical innovation, evaded the attack with maneuvers that should have been impossible. I guess that's a no, Park observed calmly. All stations begin the demonstration. What followed was not a battle, but a hunting lesson. Predator 1 used tactics that combined human innovation with captured alien technology to systematically pick apart the Kithra formation. The human crew targeted specific systems on each alien ship, disabling weapons, destroying communications, eliminating their ability to coordinate responses. The Kithra discovered what their prey species across 17 star systems had experienced. The helpless terror of being hunted by something that understood their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. On Earth's surface, the ground campaign reached its climax as human hunter-killer teams emerged from underground facilities in coordinated attacks across the globe. The aliens who had come to harvest humanity found themselves being systematically eliminated by prey that had become predators. In the underground command center, Dr. Chin watched real-time feeds from battlefields around the world as human forces demonstrated that they had learned every lesson their enemies had taught them. The same tactical precision that the Kithra used to hunt civilizations across the galaxy was being turned against them with devastating effectiveness. Casualties? General Rodriguez asked. Theirs or ours? Chin replied. Because they're losing forces faster than we can count them. Our people are taking minimal losses. The hunter-killer teams are operating at 97% efficiency. The tide had turned completely. The species that had ruled the galaxy through predatory dominance was experiencing systematic defeat at the hands of prey that refused to remain prey. Worse, they were being hunted using their own technology, their own tactics, their own methods improved by human innovation. Commander Vextai made the decision that no Kithra commander had ever been forced to make in recorded history. Standing on the bridge of his damaged flagship, watching his fleet being systematically destroyed by a single human spacecraft while his ground forces were eliminated across the planet below, he activated the emergency withdrawal protocol. All units, emergency retreat, he broadcast to his remaining ships. Full withdrawal from this system. Immediately, the Kithra fleet that had arrived to harvest Earth limped away with less than half their original number. They left behind thousands of dead warriors, hundreds of destroyed vehicles, and, most importantly, the knowledge that they were no longer the galaxy's apex predators. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Dr. Chun broadcast a final message to the retreating fleet. You're welcome to return anytime you want to learn more about human hospitality. We'll be ready to hunt you. From the deepest tunnels beneath Earth's cities to the orbital platforms that now defended the planet, humanity had proven that even the galaxy's most successful predators could become prey when they encountered a species that refused to be hunted. The Kithra had learned the hard way that on Earth, everything was trying to kill everything else. And humanity had just taught them why they had survived that evolutionary battlefield long enough to reach the stars. The hunters had become the hunted. The prey had become the predators. and the galaxy would never be the same.